The Indo-Pacific is a strategic and geopolitical term that describes the interconnected Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean regions. Geographically, it stretches from the east coast of Africa and the Middle East, across the Indian subcontinent, through Southeast Asia, and into the western Pacific Ocean, reaching the coast of the Americas. It is not just a geographic space, but a strategic concept that highlights the growing economic, political, and military links between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. The term has replaced older concepts like Asia-Pacific to reflect these new realities, especially the rising importance of India and maritime security. The Indo-Pacific has become the epicenter of global geopolitics and the economic engine of the world in the 21st century, for several reasons. 1. Global trade artery. Over 60% of the world's maritime trade flows through Indo-Pacific waters, including oil, gas, and manufactured goods. 2. Energy and resource security. It contains key choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Malacca, and Sunda Strait, through which vital energy supplies transit daily. 3. Military hotspots areas like the South China Sea, Taiwan Strait, and East China Sea are flashpoints that could spark global conflict due to overlapping territorial claims and rising military tensions. 4. Technological and economic powerhouses. The Indo-Pacific hosts advanced economies like the United States, China, Japan, South Korea, and India, along with rising powers like Indonesia and Vietnam. 5. Great power competition. The region is witnessing a growing rivalry between the United States and its allies on one side and China on the other, shaping a new world order. 1. India, positioned at the center of the Indo-Pacific, a rising economic and military power focused on maritime security and regional leadership. 2. United States, a dominant naval force promoting a free and open Indo-Pacific, balancing China's rise. 3. China, a growing superpower with aggressive territorial ambitions and economic influence through the Belt and Road Initiative. 4. Japan, a regional economic leader aligned with US and India on security and freedom of navigation. 5. Australia, a critical Indo-Pacific democracy and military ally supporting the rules-based international order. 6. ASEAN countries. Southeast Asian nations like Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore are central players caught between great powers, but pushing for multilateralism. 7. European nations. France, the UK, and the EU have launched Indo-Pacific strategies due to their overseas territories and trade interests. The Indo-Pacific region holds immense geopolitical significance, acting as the crossroads of global commerce, energy supply, and strategic military interests. Its importance goes far beyond geography. It defines the global balance of power in the 21st century. The Indo-Pacific is home to the world's most critical sea lanes, through which a vast majority of global trade and energy flows. Any disruption here can cause global economic tremors. Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest and narrowest maritime choke points. It links the Indian Ocean with the Pacific via the South China Sea. Around 40% of global trade and 80% of China's oil imports pass through here. Strait of Hormuz, located between Iran and Oman. This strait is the gateway for Persian Gulf oil exports. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply flows through it. Instability in the Middle East directly threatens this vital corridor. Sunda Strait, Indonesia. Less congested than Malacca, but crucial for alternative trade routes. As tensions grow, nations are considering backup paths like this. Why it matters? Control or disruption of these choke points can paralyze economies, provoke military standoffs, and trigger global energy crises. The South China Sea is among the most hotly contested maritime zones in the world. Claimed almost entirely by China under the so-called 9-dash line, despite overlapping claims by Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. Rich in oil, gas, and fisheries, and vital for trade, over $3 trillion of commerce passes through annually. China has built artificial islands, militarized reefs, and established bases, defying international rulings, e.g., 2016 PCA ruling in favor of the Philippines. The U.S. and its allies regularly conduct freedom of navigation operations, FONOPs, to challenge China's claims. Why it matters. Any clash here could escalate into a regional or global conflict, threatening trade, sovereignty, and stability. The South China Sea is among the most hotly contested maritime zones in the world, claimed almost entirely by China under the so-called Nine-Dash Line, despite overlapping claims by Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. Rich in oil, gas, and fisheries, and vital for trade, over $3 trillion of commerce passes through annually. China has built artificial islands, militarized reefs, and established bases, defying international rulings. Example: 2016 PCA ruling in favor of the Philippines. The U.S. and its allies regularly conduct freedom of navigation operations, FONOPs, to challenge China's claims. Why it matters. Any clash here could escalate into a regional or global conflict, threatening trade, sovereignty, and stability. The Taiwan Strait, a narrow body of water between mainland China and Taiwan, is another flashpoint. China considers Taiwan a breakaway province and has not ruled out military force for reunification. The U.S., under its One China policy, maintains strategic ambiguity, supplying arms to Taiwan while opposing unilateral reunification. Rising Chinese military incursions into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, ADs, have increased regional anxiety. Any invasion or blockade of Taiwan would likely draw in the U.S. and allies, potentially triggering a major war. Why it matters. Taiwan is also a global tech hub, especially in semiconductors, TSMC. A conflict would disrupt global tech supply chains and destabilize the region. The Indo-Pacific has become a stage for military posturing and alliances involving major powers. United States maintains strong naval presence via 7th Fleet, based in Japan and Guam. Frequent military exercises with allies. China, rapidly modernizing its PLA Navy, now the world's largest by ship count. Aggressive naval presence in the South and East China Seas. India, expanding its Blue Water Navy, conducting regular joint drills, and increasing its presence from the Arabian Sea to the Western Pacific. Japan, Australia, and France, each investing heavily in Indo-Pacific strategies and defense partnerships. Multilateral military exercises like RIMPAC, Malabar, and Milan emphasize interoperability and joint response to threats. Why it matters. The region is no longer unipolar. The growing presence of multiple military powers means strategic competition, but also the risk of accidental conflict. India's role in the Indo-Pacific has become increasingly central in shaping the region's stability, security, and economic connectivity. As a resident power with a long coastline and vital maritime interests, India is positioning itself as a net security provider and a leader of the global south in this strategic space. India's geography gives it a natural strategic edge in the Indo-Pacific. Located at the crossroads of the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia, India sits in proximity to major sea lanes of communication, SLOCs, that carry global trade and energy. With a coastline of over 7,500 kilometers and access to the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and Indian Ocean, India can monitor and influence key maritime choke points like the Strait of Malacca, Persian Gulf, and Bab el-Mandeb. Its location allows India to act as a bridge between East and West, and between the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean spheres. India's strategic vision for the Indo-Pacific is rooted in peaceful cooperation, maritime security, and regional development. SAGAR, Security and Growth for All in the Region. Launched in 2015, SAGAR emphasizes inclusive maritime collaboration, economic growth, environmental sustainability, and disaster response in the Indian Ocean region, IOR. It underlines India's role as a benevolent maritime power. IPOI, Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. Proposed by Prime Minister Modi at the East Asia Summit in 2019, IPOI focuses on 7 pillars, including maritime security, marine ecology, disaster risk reduction capacity building, trade connectivity, Maritime Transport Science and Technology. It aims to promote a free, open, inclusive, and rules-based Indo-Pacific, working with like-minded nations. India is rapidly enhancing its naval capabilities to protect its interests and uphold freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific. The Indian Navy is being transformed into a blue water force capable of long-range missions and sustained operations. Key developments include indigenous aircraft carriers, e.g., INS Vikrant, nuclear-powered submarines, e.g., INS Arihant, maritime surveillance systems, and satellite-based domain awareness. Expansion of logistics and military access agreements with countries like the USA, France, Australia, and Japan, allowing Indian warships to refuel and operate in the Pacific and beyond. Hosting and participating in multilateral exercises like Malabar, Milan, and RIMPAC, boosting interoperability with partner navies. India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands, ANI, are a geostrategic asset in the Indo-Pacific. Located near the Malacca Strait, they give India a forward operating base to monitor maritime traffic between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. ANI hosts the Tri-Service Andaman and Nicobar Command, enabling coordinated operations by the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Plans are underway to develop infrastructure, including airstrips, ports, and surveillance facilities, to turn ANI into a major maritime and logistics hub. They also act as a strategic counterweight to China's presence in the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean, string of pearls. India's central location, combined with its strategic vision and growing naval capabilities, makes it a pivotal power in ensuring peace, security, and cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. It is not just responding to global changes, but actively shaping the region's future. The Indo-Pacific has emerged as a hub of strategic convergence where major powers form alliances to preserve regional stability, freedom of navigation, and a rules-based order. India plays a vital role in this evolving security architecture, participating in multilateral forums and strengthening bilateral defense relationships. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, QUAD, is one of the most significant strategic groupings in the Indo-Pacific. Originally conceived in 2007 and revived in 2017, the Quad includes India, the United States, Japan, and Australia. While not a military alliance, Quad promotes cooperation on maritime security, counter-terrorism, cybersecurity, infrastructure development, climate change and supply chain resilience. Seen as a counterbalance to China's assertiveness, especially in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait, regular Quad summits and naval exercises, like Malabar, signal a commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. Quad represents shared democratic values and a collective effort to ensure security, sovereignty, and stability across the region. AUKUS is a trilateral security pact announced in 2021 involving Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Core objective: to help Australia acquire nuclear-powered submarines, significantly boosting its naval reach and deterrence capability. AUKUS also covers cooperation on AI, quantum technologies, cybersecurity, and undersea warfare. Although not a member, India supports AUKUS as it contributes to regional balance. It complements Quad's strategic goals and enhances collective capacity to deter aggression in the Indo-Pacific. India has cultivated strong bilateral defense partnerships with key Indo-Pacific and Western powers. France. Strategic partnership since 1998. Joint naval drills like Varuna. Defense procurement, e.g., Rafale jets, Scorpène submarines. Collaboration in the Western Indian Ocean and Indo-Pacific Maritime Surveillance United States. Foundational defense agreements signed. COMCASA, LIMOA, BECA. Regular 2+2 strategic dialogues. Co-development projects under Defense Technology and Trade Initiative, DTTI, Japan. Deepening naval cooperation. Joint exercises like JIMEX. India-Japan act as key Quad pillars with shared Indo-Pacific outlook. Australia. Elevation to comprehensive strategic partnership. Conducting joint exercises and information sharing on Indo-Pacific developments. Port calls and naval coordination in the Indian Ocean and Western Pacific. These partnerships allow India to project power, enhance interoperability, and maintain a security network across key regions. India participates in several multilateral and bilateral military exercises, reinforcing its role as a trusted strategic partner. Malabar, India, US, Japan, Australia. high-level naval exercise focused on anti-submarine warfare, sea control, and interoperability. Milan. Hosted by India, it is a naval multilateral exercise involving over 40 nations, promoting maritime cooperation and coordination. RIMPAC, Rim of the Pacific, led by US. India's participation reflects growing naval confidence and a commitment to collective security. Varuna, India-France, GIMEX, India-Japan, AUSINDEX, India-Australia. Strengthen India's bilateral defense diplomacy. These exercises enhance India's maritime domain awareness, improve military coordination, and underscore its commitment to regional peace and readiness. India's deepening strategic partnerships and participation in high-level joint exercises position it as a key pillar of Indo-Pacific security architecture. These ties not only build deterrence, but also strengthen collective preparedness for emerging threats. China's increasing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific reflects its desire to reshape regional order, secure strategic dominance, and challenge the influence of the West and regional powers like India and Japan. This expansionist agenda is executed through a mix of economic investments, military buildup, and aggressive diplomacy, which has raised serious concerns among its neighbors and global powers alike. Launched in 2013, the Belt and Road Initiative is China's global infrastructure and connectivity project, aiming to link Asia, Africa, and Europe through roads, ports, railways, pipelines, and digital infrastructure. In the Indo-Pacific context, BRI includes maritime projects such as Gwadar Port, Pakistan, Hambantota Port, Sri Lanka, Kyaukphyu Port, Myanmar, investments in the Maldives, Bangladesh, and Southeast Asia. Critics argue BRI creates debt traps and extends China's strategic control over critical infrastructure in smaller nations. India opposes BRI, especially since the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, violating India's territorial sovereignty. The South China Sea is a major flashpoint in the Indo-Pacific, rich in resources and vital for global maritime trade. Despite an international tribunal ruling against its claims, 2016, China insists on its 9-line claim covering most of the sea. China has built artificial islands and installed military infrastructure, including runways, missile systems, naval facilities. These actions threaten freedom of navigation, provoke disputes with countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei, and escalate military tension with the US and allies conducting freedom of navigation operations, FONOPs. The String of Pearls refers to China's strategy of establishing a network of commercial and military facilities across the Indian Ocean region, IOR, encircling India. Key pearls include Gwadar Port, Pakistan, Hambantota, Sri Lanka, Chittagong, Bangladesh, port projects in Myanmar, Maldives, Djibouti, and East Africa. While officially framed as economic projects, these ports have dual-use potential, meaning they can be used for naval deployments and surveillance. Implications for India. Strategic encirclement and erosion of India's influence in its neighborhood, increased Chinese naval presence in India's backyard, challenges to India's ambitions as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean. China's aggressive posture has led to diplomatic tensions and military confrontations across Asia. India. Ongoing border tensions, particularly in Ladakh. Galwan Belly clashes in 2020. Line of Actual Control, LC, remains undefined and unstable. Taiwan. China views Taiwan as a breakaway province and threatens forceful reunification. Frequent incursions into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, ADIZ, raise war concerns. Japan. Territorial dispute over the Senkaku/Diaoyu Islands in the East China Sea, maritime standoffs, and increased Japanese defense spending in response. Vietnam and AMP. The Philippines. Clashes over fishing rights, oil exploration, and reef militarization in the South China Sea. Australia. Trade wars, cyber attacks, and diplomatic retaliation after Canberra called for COVID-19 origin investigations. These aggressive moves isolate China diplomatically, galvanize regional coalitions, and justify increased military and strategic cooperation among Indo-Pacific powers. China's expansionist strategy through the BRI, militarization, and coercion is rapidly transforming the geopolitical landscape of the Indo-Pacific. While it boosts China's regional influence, it has also triggered strategic pushback, especially from India, the US, Japan, and Australia, reshaping alliances and fueling an intensifying contest for regional supremacy. The Indo-Pacific is not only a geopolitical flashpoint, but also the economic engine of the 21st century. Home to over 60% of the world's population and contributing significantly to global GDP, this region plays a vital role in global trade, investment, and economic connectivity. It is central to the future of supply chains, infrastructure corridors, and blue economy initiatives. Over 60% of global maritime trade passes through the Indo-Pacific, especially via strategic sea lanes such as Strait of Malacca, Strait of Hormuz, South China Sea. The region connects East Asia's manufacturing hubs with global markets, making it a critical artery of the global economy. Major economies such as China, India, Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN nations rely heavily on these routes for energy imports and exports. Any disruption in this region, whether due to conflict or piracy, can trigger global supply chain shocks, fuel price spikes, and economic instability. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed overdependence on China-centric supply chains, leading countries to diversify and de-risk their trade dependencies. Strategies adopted: China Plus One policy by Western and Asian companies. India, Vietnam, and Indonesia emerging as alternate manufacturing hubs, rise of regional trade agreements like RCEP and IPEF to stabilize trade. India launched the PLI, production-linked incentive schemes to attract global firms in electronics, pharmaceuticals, and renewable energy. The Indo-Pacific is evolving into a multipolar economic ecosystem with diversified supply routes and manufacturing bases. India has proactively promoted alternative trade connectivity projects to reduce dependence on choke points dominated by China and expand its regional footprint. Chabahar Port, Iran. Jointly developed by India and Iran, Chabahar offers a gateway to Central Asia and Afghanistan, bypasses Pakistan, and connects India to the International North-South Transport Corridor, INST, enhances India's role as a regional connector and strategic counterweight to China's Gwadar Port. India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, proposed during the G20 Summit 2023 with support from the US, EU, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, aims to link India with Europe via the Middle East using a mix of rail, road, and shipping infrastructure. Seen as a strategic counter to the Belt and Road Initiative, fostering secure, inclusive, and resilient trade. Strategic value. These projects strengthen India's geo-economic influence, offer diversified trade routes, and position India as a logistics hub in a restructured global order. The blue economy, sustainable use of ocean resources, has emerged as a vital component of Indo-Pacific economic strategy. India promotes the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, IPOI, for regional collaboration on fisheries and marine resources, renewable ocean energy, coastal tourism, maritime security and pollution control. Coastal states like Sri Lanka, Maldives, Indonesia, and Seychelles are key blue economy partners. India extends development aid, credit lines, and technical assistance to smaller island nations as part of its economic diplomacy. India's Sagar vision, security and growth for all in the region, blends economic and security outreach across the Indian Ocean. Blue economy initiatives enhance sustainable development, boost regional goodwill, and serve as an effective counter to China's checkbook diplomacy. The Indo-Pacific's economic significance is undeniable. As global trade patterns shift and supply chains diversify, India is leveraging its geography, policy initiatives, and regional partnerships to emerge as a central economic power, offering secure, sustainable, and strategic alternatives in a rapidly changing global order. In the contest for influence in the Indo-Pacific, hard power, military and economic strength, is only one side of the equation. Soft power, or the ability to shape preferences and perceptions through culture, values, diplomacy, and influence, plays a critical role in defining regional partnerships and shaping global narratives. India and China are using soft power in very different ways, while smaller regional actors like ASEAN and Pacific Island nations are emerging as important players in multilateral diplomacy. 1. India's use of soft power. India has a long tradition of leveraging civilizational heritage, democratic values, and people-to-people ties to enhance its influence in the Indo-Pacific. Cultural diplomacy. Promotion of yoga, Ayurveda, Indian cinema, and spiritualism through global events and Indian cultural centers. International Day of Yoga, June 21st, recognized by the UN, symbolizing India's cultural outreach. Sanskrit, Buddhism, and shared historical ties with Southeast Asia strengthen India's cultural connect with ASEAN nations. Diaspora diplomacy. The Indian diaspora, estimated at over 30 million, plays a crucial role in promoting India's image globally. Strong Indian communities in the US, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, Fiji, Mauritius, and Gulf countries. India actively engages with its diaspora through initiatives like Pravasi Bharatiya Divas and OCI, Overseas Citizen of India cards. Vaccine and development diplomacy. During COVID-19, India launched Vaccine Maitri, Vaccine Friendship, sending millions of doses to Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This humanitarian initiative won goodwill and highlighted India's role as a reliable partner and responsible global actor. India also extends lines of credit, technical training, ITech, and disaster relief to smaller Indo-Pacific nations. While China's approach is more state-controlled and infrastructure-driven, it actively uses soft power to shape the Indo-Pacific narrative. Infrastructure diplomacy, checkbook diplomacy. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China offers massive loans and infrastructure development in smaller nations. Ports, roads, and railways built under BRI generate economic dependency, enhancing China's leverage. However, this often leads to debt traps, e.g., Sri Lanka's Hambantota port, drawing criticism and skepticism. Media and propaganda influence. China funds global media outlets, e.g., CGTN, Xinhua, to project a positive image of Chinese governance and development. Efforts to influence education and political narratives through Confucius Institutes, scholarships, and elite exchanges. Social media campaigns and cyber activities to manipulate public opinion and counter Western and Indian narratives. Limitations. Authoritarianism, human rights concerns, and lack of transparency hinder China's ability to generate genuine trust among Indo-Pacific nations. Smaller nations in Southeast Asia and the Pacific are emerging as swing states in the soft power game, courted by both India and China. ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Central to Indo-Pacific diplomacy due to economic integration, geographic location, and multilateral influence. Advocates for an ASEAN centrality approach, balancing ties between major powers. India participates in mechanisms like East Asia Summit, ASEAN-India Summit, and ADMM Plus to deepen engagement. Pacific Island nations. Despite their small size, they hold strategic value due to maritime zones and votes in international forums. China has signed security pacts, e.g., with Solomon Islands, raising concerns among democratic nations. India promotes initiatives like FEPIC, Forum for Indo-Pacific Islands Cooperation, to strengthen ties through education, healthcare, and renewable energy projects. In the Indo-Pacific, soft power diplomacy is a subtle yet powerful tool in the contest for regional influence. India's emphasis on shared heritage, democratic values, and humanitarian assistance gives it a credible and trusted profile. In contrast, China's influence is more transactional and strategic, gaining reach but often lacking genuine goodwill. Meanwhile, ASEAN and Pacific nations are strategically navigating between these powers to maximize their autonomy and benefits in an increasingly multipolar region. While the Indo-Pacific holds immense promise, it is also one of the world's most complex and contested regions. The intersection of strategic rivalries, military buildups, environmental vulnerabilities, and lack of institutional frameworks has created an atmosphere of fragile stability. These challenges threaten not only regional peace, but also the economic and geopolitical architecture that supports global order. The Indo-Pacific is witnessing a return of great power competition, especially between the United States and China, with India, Japan, Australia, and others playing pivotal balancing roles. Rise of China as a revisionist power has triggered regional insecurity. U.S. strategic pivot to Asia, under Obama's rebalance and Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy, seeks to contain Chinese aggression. Growing militarization, naval exercises, and strategic posturing have turned the region into a theater of strategic contestation. This power rivalry increases the risk of miscalculation, proxy confrontations, and an arms race in the region, especially around the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, and eastern Ladakh. China's aggressive policies and territorial ambitions have become one of the most destabilizing forces in the Indo-Pacific. South China Sea, militarization of artificial islands, rejection of international rulings, and harassment of neighboring vessels. Taiwan Strait, increased PLA, People's Liberation Army, air and naval incursions, threat of forceful reunification. India-China border standoff, prolonged military tensions, post-Galwan clash, 2020. Wolf warrior diplomacy, aggressive Chinese rhetoric and influence operations against countries critical of Beijing. Simultaneously, U.S.-China relations are strained over Taiwan policy, tech decoupling, freedom of navigation operations, PhoneOps, and human rights issues. The risk of a hot conflict, intentional or accidental, is now higher than at any point in recent history, affecting global peace and economic stability. The Indo-Pacific is one of the most climate-vulnerable regions in the world. Rising sea levels threaten low-lying island nations such as Maldives, Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Fiji. Extreme weather events, coral bleaching, ocean acidification, and overfishing are endangering livelihoods and ecosystems. Climate-induced displacement is an emerging human security crisis. Infrastructure projects under BRI have been criticized for unsustainable environmental practices. Regional response. Initiatives like India's Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI, and Australia's focus on climate adaptation aim to mitigate these threats. However, limited financial and technical capacity hinders comprehensive climate resilience across the region. Unlike NATO or the EU, the Indo-Pacific lacks a robust multilateral security architecture to manage regional disputes or crises. ASEAN champions centrality, but avoids taking sides in conflicts, limiting its effectiveness in conflict resolution. QUAD and AUKUS are important but remain non-binding coalitions, lacking a permanent institutional structure or collective defense guarantee. Bilateral defense ties, India-US, US-Japan, Australia-India, are growing but fragmented. No consensus on key issues such as South China Sea sovereignty, military code of conduct, cyber and space governance. This institutional vacuum increases the chance of unilateral action and makes conflict de-escalation difficult. Smaller states are left navigating between powerful blocs with limited protective mechanisms. The Indo-Pacific stands at a strategic crossroads. While it holds the promise of economic growth and cooperation, it is also vulnerable to strategic conflict, ecological collapse, and diplomatic fragmentation. Addressing these challenges requires greater regional trust, transparent dialogue, inclusive frameworks, and sustainable development models, with India playing a key bridging role between East and West, North and South. The Indo-Pacific presents India not just with challenges, but with a historic opportunity to redefine its global role. As the region undergoes strategic transformation, India has the potential to emerge as a stabilizing force, a bridge between East and West, and a credible leader of the global South. Through a combination of strategic foresight, military modernization, diplomatic engagement, and commitment to international law, India is positioning itself as a pillar of regional order in the 21st century. India aspires to be more than just a regional power. It seeks to be a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific, capable of contributing to peace, stability, and disaster relief beyond its borders. Regular deployment of naval missions to ensure maritime safety, anti-piracy patrols, and Gulf of Aden HADR missions. Increasing maritime cooperation with smaller nations in the Indian Ocean region, IR. Strategic use of Andaman and Nicobar Islands and naval bases in Mauritius, Seychelles, and Oman to extend its reach. India's security and growth for all in the region, Sagar. Vision emphasizes collective maritime security and development. India's rising geopolitical role demands a parallel rise in military preparedness and indigenous capability building. Modernization of Indian Navy with aircraft carriers, INS Vikrant, nuclear submarines, INS Arihant, and advanced warships. Investment in indigenous defense production under Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India. Strengthening space, cyber, and AI capabilities for future warfare. Collaborations in critical and emerging technologies, 5G, semiconductors, quantum, drones, with Quad and Western allies. India's foreign policy emphasizes inclusive multilateralism and giving voice to developing nations, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. Proactively engaging through forums like QUAD, IRA, Indian Ocean Rim Association, BIMSTEC, and East Asia Summit. Advocating reforms in UN Security Council, WTO, and global financial institutions. Building development partnerships in Africa, ASEAN, Pacific Islands, and Central Asia via capacity building, education, digital connectivity, and climate resilience projects. India's G20 presidency and Global South Summit have projected it as a responsible global leader. India strongly supports a free, open, inclusive, and rules-based Indo-Pacific, opposing unilateral actions and coercive tactics. Advocates adherence to UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and peaceful dispute resolution. Participates in freedom of navigation operations, FONOPS, and joint naval drills to maintain maritime stability. Counters China's expansionism through strategic dialogues and military interoperability with like-minded democracies. India's balanced diplomacy allows it to engage with both Western democracies and ASEAN non-aligned partners, earning trust from all sides. India's actions in the Indo-Pacific will define its global identity over the next few decades. The region is where India's values of democracy, diversity, peaceful coexistence, and development can be projected most effectively. With sustained political will, strategic investment, and international collaboration, India can serve as a linchpin of regional security, lead in crafting a new model of South-South cooperation, offer an alternative to authoritarian and debt-driven development models, shape a multipolar, inclusive, and just world order. The Indo-Pacific is not just a strategic theater, it is India's geopolitical canvas. In this dynamic and contested region, India has the opportunity to fulfill its destiny as a civilizational power and modern global force, committed to stability, prosperity, and freedom of the seas. The Indo-Pacific has emerged as the epicenter of global strategic focus in the 21st century. From the vital sea lanes that fuel international trade to the growing contest between major powers, the region has become the geopolitical heartbeat of the world. Its future will shape not just the destiny of the countries within it, but the trajectory of global peace, security, and economic progress. In this unfolding narrative, India stands at a pivotal juncture. Blessed with a strategic location, a growing economy, and a forward-looking maritime vision, India is rising as a key maritime and regional power. Through doctrines like SAGAR, initiatives like IPOI, and active participation in multilateral platforms, India is not only safeguarding its own interests, but also contributing meaningfully to a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. However, power rivalries, military tensions, environmental crises, and institutional gaps continue to threaten the region's stability. The answer to these challenges lies in cooperation over confrontation, dialogue over dominance, and shared rules over unilateral ambition. Moving forward, maintaining peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific will require strategic partnerships grounded in mutual respect, multilateral institutions that reflect contemporary realities, and responsible leadership from major powers, including India. As the world's attention stays firmly fixed on the Indo-Pacific, India's role will not be that of a bystander, but of a driver of change, a defender of balance, and a champion of cooperation.